love the quote from Gordon Cole here as Bobby is coming in here. He says, "You are witnessing a front three-quarter view of two adults sharing a tender moment."
One take, one take, one take, one
Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our discussions of this great series, which is known as Twin Peaks, which is right here in this box. What's in the box? What's in the box? It's Twin Peaks. And so as you may know, or some of you may know, what we have been doing so far on this channel is we've been talking about each of the episodes, one episode at a time in these video discussions. And that brings us to the episode which is referred to as episode 26. So a lot of episodes down, but we have quite a bit more to go. So because it's a vast world that is Twin Peaks. And so now we find ourselves in that vast world, and specifically the events that are included in this episode 26. So as per usual, I'd like to focus on the events leading up to this episode and included in this episode 26, and not necessarily focus anything beyond this episode 26, although we might make some hints or suggestions or guesses as to what might or might not occur after this episode. But anyway, let's focus primarily on this episode, which is, again, episode 26. Now, I should also point out that I am not at all an expert when it comes to Twin Peaks, so I always get these details wrong. But I will try to correct where I can, and I apologize in advance for any mistakes I make. But again, I will try to avoid those where I am able to. And so with that, let us go right into the heart of the matter, episode 26. And so as you know, we have the events from the prior episode of Owl Cave and the various cave paintings, petroglyphs, I think they're referred to. And so from the previous episode, we know that through some kind of mechanism of a stick protruding out of a particular rock formation with a type of insignia or drawing at the very base, which is turned in a specific direction, that Windom Earle is able to find out, some kind of rumbling occurs. And indeed, what the authorities, the law officers find in terms of the Owl Cave is, right, someone has been there, right, and there has been some kind of activity going on. And then there is this huge sort of drawing or cave painting that seems to be part of this. So Andy, remember, Andy has great drawing skills, as evidence from some episodes back. Remember when he was able to draw from Sarah Palmer's description, the picture that ended up being that of Bob, right? From many an episode ago. Now he's asked to rely on his drawing skills again to try to copy down what this picture or this cave painting or petroglyph seems to be depicting. And so what is this meaning? What's going on here? What is the significance of Owl Cave? And we shall have to wait and see. And also we know that Windom Earle seems to be maybe one or maybe more steps ahead of them. And so we know that he already has this information of the cave painting, and he's studying it and trying to figure out its significance. And also we have information from him about these particular phrases that have been mentioned before, the White Lodge and the Black Lodge. And so what is going on here in terms of the White Lodge and the Black Lodge? And will we get more answers as we progress through this episode and maybe beyond this episode? Again, we shall see. Also, there is, together with Leo, there is another young man seemingly there in this cabin. And so he seems to be expecting some kind of maybe a beverage or beer of some kind. And we're not sure what the situation is with this youth, although later we understand that he's going to be encased in a type of huge paper mache mock-up of a chess piece, a pawn. And then the arrow is going to come into play here bow and arrow, unfortunately for this young man, because what happens is, to Leo's shock and horror, Wyndham Earl is going to shoot the arrow into this particular structure, killing the young man inside. And this will be the way in which this episode then ends, in a very eerie, creepy way, with another victim from Wyndham Earl and another message to Cooper. And indeed, this image of the young man with his eyes opens, the dead body, and the gazebo, and everyone thinking that it's a bomb, but of course it's unpacked to reveal this huge mock-up of a chess piece with this dead body inside. It's very gruesome. Again, we're reminded too of the incident involving the dead body found with the finger pointing to a particular part of the chessboard. And this was around the time of the explosion and the power outage and the fire. And indeed, I think there is a mentioning here in Owl Cave of Hawke recognizing the footprint, because he said it was from the same footprint that he saw right from a previous situation involving the power station. So this is probably bringing all the elements together. And of course, we know that it's pointing towards Wyndham Earl perpetrating all these things that seem to be involving Owl Cave and this petroglyph and cave painting, and what's going on the chessboard, and the long-term, the high-stakes life and death chess game that's also being played out, Wyndham Earl versus Dale Cooper. So who will survive? Who will come out on top, the winner? Again, we shall have to wait and see. But it's, again, a very eerie and creepy set of circumstances. Now, we also know that Wyndham Earl is sort of one step ahead of them because of the bonsai tree, the plant, that he is able to listen in on conversations. Wyndham Earl is. So he seems to be a couple steps ahead of the game here. But again, we shall have to wait and see how this figures itself out. Now, we also know that in terms of mysteries, we also have this idea of the box. I mentioned what's in the box. And so we have the black box from Thomas Eckert. And so Catherine is very intent on trying to open this, unable to. Pete tries. Although it's at first it seems like it's a puzzle box of some sort, and then of course later in the episode when Sheriff Truman visits Catherine and asking about Josie and if there's anything that Catherine could tell Sheriff Truman to maybe find some kind of answers or maybe a sense of closure about Josie, and I think Catherine is suggesting the fact that maybe Josie didn't really show herself or her true self to other people, and so maybe there are still mysteries, and maybe there are things that no one will ever know about Josie and who she really was. And so again, some mysteries are still, there's some unsolved or some unanswered questions. And we also know that Truman is still maybe thinking about Josie, although he seems to be in better situation than he was immediately after the death of Josie, and when he was in this drunken state of being really heartbroken. But now he seems to have recovered, and now he's level-headed enough to be calm and reasonable as he's trying to get these answers. He doesn't quite get them, I think, but at the same time, this box issue comes up and it's dropped, and of course now we have the revelation that something is inside the box. And so the box reveals another box inside, and this is right. So it's some kind of puzzle box that reveals another puzzle box. So how is that going to get open? So we shall later see. And the curiosity levels are, of course, increased, and Catherine seems to be more intent on trying to figure out what the heck is inside this box, this smaller box that was encased in this larger box. Okay, so what's in the box? What are in the boxes? So then we'll have to find out again going forward. Now, we also know that there is more intrigue with regard to the Stop Ghostwood campaign, and there's this idea, speaking of Catherine and the Stop Ghostwood campaign and Pete, and we know that the Miss Twin Peaks contest is also being planned. Of course, we have other levels of intrigue going on with this episode. So first of all, we have this Miss Twin Peaks contest that is being advertised, and so a number of the people in Twin Peaks are wondering whether or not they should participate and enter the contest. And so Bobby, for example, tries to convince Shelley to enter the contest, and this idea about that Bobby gives about how beautiful people seem to have it easy in this world, and so this is his way of trying to get Shelley to enter, and hopefully she can win. And if she can win, then their lives might be maybe better off for that. So Shelley shows some maybe lack of confidence in this area, but we shall see whether she enters or not, and indeed whether other members of the Twin Peaks community enter. And we know that Lana and Dwayne have their little conversation, and Lana is really intent not just of entering the contest, but also of winning. And so she tries to use her influence over Dwayne Milford to see if maybe she can have some strings pulled in her favor. And so we shall see what happens in terms of who's going to win the Miss Twin Peaks contest, who's going to enter, what's going to happen between Lana and Dwayne, what's all this intrigue and backstage potential shenanigans that seem to be afoot in terms of who's going to win this contest. Okay, so a lot of intrigue is going on there. Speaking of intrigue, of course, we also have at the same time in these diner scenes, Cooper entering, and we have the Cooper asking Annie essentially out on a date, the nature study date, and she agrees. And then also he catches wind of the poem that Shelley mentions sort of offhand, and this sets Dale Cooper off, and he recognizes the poem indeed, so he asks about what this was. And so this means that there's the investigation that is afoot regarding this particular poem, and Hawk is going to be assisting Cooper with this, and also getting Leo's arrest report, because there might be some connection between Leo and the poem that was written out on this paper. Again, we as viewers from previous episodes recall that Wyndham Earle seemed to have made Leo sit down at a desk and write out what we understand to be this poem. But again, Dale Cooper is catching up with the plan or the plot of Wyndham Earle here. And so this part of the poem, how the poem fits in, and whether Dale Cooper will figure out what's going on. He seems to be on the right track, by the way. So we shall see what happens here. Now, also speaking of the investigation aspect, we also understand that this is a moment, this part of the episode is where Cooper is asking the help of Major Briggs. And so Major Briggs is also looking at the way that the Owl Cave petroglyph is being, again, reproduced once again by Andy at the sheriff's station. And then Cooper asks Major Briggs for his assistance to try to get information, Project Blue Book files in connection with Wyndham Earle. Now, Major Briggs, we know, is a very principled human being. And so this sort of goes against those principles in terms of confidentiality and serving a type of civic duty, military duty, and protection and preservation of secrets, right? But at the same time, Dale Cooper tries to convince him otherwise, and Major Briggs asks, will this possibly prevent the loss of life? And so Dale Cooper says yes. And so I think this is something that maybe will be enough to convince Major Briggs to maybe break those principles in favor of helping Cooper get some information about Project Blue Book and Wyndham Earle. So again, we shall see what goes on. It's great to see Major Briggs and Dale Cooper together like this. I mean, these are two very principled individuals. They seem to have common goals, although sometimes maybe those common goals aren't always on the same path, so to speak. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. But when they are on the same path, it really is a beautiful thing indeed. So we shall see if and how Major Briggs is able to assist Dale Cooper in this particular line of questioning, or this line of inquiry regarding Project Blue Book, and Wyndham Earle. And so, and we shall see this a little bit played out in the latter part of this episode, of course. And so we also have the intrigue involving the Stop Ghostwood project, and also the plans by Ben Horne. And also this involves, for example, the wine tasting event of Nose Bandaged Dick Tremaine. and he's trying to show off his wine tasting skills. Of course, seems somewhat disparagingly towards Andy and Lucy, but somewhat lovingly, shall we say, towards Lana's comments, who also attends this wine tasting event. So again, some intrigue happens here, and Lucy at the end of this doesn't seem to be at all impressed, and so she shows a bit of annoyance towards Dick Tremaine in terms of the spitting out of the wine, of course. So I should mention too a number of other things. For instance, about let's go back to the Miss Twin Peaks contest, right? So we have a number of people that seem to be entering the contest. Maybe, for example, Nadine as well, and so this gives the opportunity for Mike to tell Bobby exactly what it is that Mike sees in Nadine, or what is it that he's getting out of this relationship. And he reveals something about the combination of sexual maturity and superhuman strength, and he whispers something to Bobby. Again, here we have another instance of one character whispering something to another character, and we saw this, for instance, when Dale Cooper whispered something into the ear of Sheriff Truman just before they in terms of what happened to Leland Palmer and Ben Horne during that very crucial episode, of course. And of course, there's also the very famous moment where Laura Palmer, or this figure that looks like Laura Palmer, let's put it that way, in the dream/vision of Cooper, whisper something into Cooper's ear. So here we have another instance where Mike whispers something into Bobby's ear, and Bobby seems to be so impressed, because he's like, wow, oh, wow, in terms of whatever Mike says, in terms of let's say, the sexual prowess of Nadine. One can only imagine, I suppose. I've always wondered exactly what Mike said to Bobby that made him so impressed like that. One can only imagine what that might be. But in any event, yes. So we have a number of participants underway, and also this is the opportunity for Ben Horne to make the proposal that the speech, this could be involving a speech that has to do with maybe sort of environmentalism. So this is, of course, linking, or his attempt to try to link to the Stop Ghostwood aspect of the campaign, the environmentalist campaign of that. So it's interesting to see how the participants, or the contestants, will fashion their own speeches. And as part of their competition. So, okay, so that's also the link between Ben Horne and Stop Ghostwood and Miss Twin Peaks competition. Now, speaking of Ben Horne, we also remember have this something that's going on between Ben Horne and Eileen Hayward. And so Donna is asking her mother at the dinner table, right, or at the right, she's asking at the dining room table here about what's going on with Ben Horne and her mother. And so maybe there's some mentioning here. Doc Hayward tries to cover this up with mention of charities, but it doesn't seem to be convincing Donna. There's this still mystery about what's going on between Eileen Hayward and Ben Horne. So we shall see what this is, but maybe we're beginning to get a sense of, and maybe Donna's beginning to get a sense of what this might mean, or the implication of this. But we shall have to wait and see. Now, I mentioned Donna and Shelley and Audrey in terms of the poem. Now we mentioned Donna here. Also, Audrey makes some. Her presence is felt definitely by Jack, because Jack is seemingly in love with Audrey. And so there's a moment between Jack and Dale Cooper in front of the sort of fireplace there at the Great Northern, and they're sort of sharing their stories or their feelings about love, in terms of love causing more pain. That's what Jack seems to say, or agony, whereas also Cooper says, there's nothing like it. And so there's a sort of pessimistic approach, but there's also an optimistic approach. But they're all both talking about the same thing. So, Jack, of course, thinking about Audrey, and then Dale thinking about Annie Blackburn, because of course we have here the nature study date, and the outdoors, and the two of them talking, and Dale Cooper trying to maybe get to know Annie, or maybe become intimate and close, and for her to confide in him. She might not necessarily be ready to talk to him yet about certain details, maybe some mark on her wrist, which might be suggestive of something. And Cooper probably has a sense of what this might mean, but he's waiting for Annie to share this if she's willing to do so. And so there is a type of a romance blossoming between the two of them, Annie and Dale Cooper. So again, we shall see what this has in store for Dale Cooper, and indeed, of course, too, Wyndham Earle seems to be in the distance there as well. Now, speaking of romance, I should also mention the great scene here between Gordon Cole and Shelley Johnson. And of course, Gordon Cole portrayed by the one and only David Lynch. And here we have from previous episode, Gordon Cole really smitten with Shelley Johnson portrayed by Machen Amick. And, not surprising, of course, because as Gordon Cole, mentions, he has this old-fashioned, almost old-school way about him when it comes to maybe talking with women. And so he has this sort of folksy, almost down-to-earth approach to him, which is very much part of sort of the Americana attitude or aspect of Twin Peaks that's captured in many an episode, including this, as personified also by the performance by David Lynch. And I love when he says, I don't know when I'm going to return to Twin Peaks. And I think that has some kind of echo in terms of where this episode falls, episode 26, and where it falls in the context of season 2. We don't have that many episodes left in terms of season 2, but we're not sure. If this is Gordon Cole speaking, or maybe it's also David Lynch speaking, in terms of when he's going to visit the story that is Twin Peaks again. Maybe he's not sure. We shall have to wait and see. But of course, he is expressing sort of love and just this feeling of romance for Shelley. And he says that if he's not going to kiss her now, he's going to regret it. And so there's a moment of kissing between the two of them. And just at the moment when Bobby comes in, of course. And I love the quote from Gordon Cole here as Bobby is coming in here. He says, "You are witnessing a front three-quarter view of two adults sharing a tender moment." I love that very much. And so, and I also love the follow-up that he says, take a look. What is it? Take another look, Sonny. It's going to happen again. And I love that. It's going to happen again. It reminds me of the giant, right? In a previous episode when the giant says, "It is happening again. It is happening again." I can imagine maybe Gordon Cole saying this. He does say it in his own way to Bobby here. He says, it's gonna happen again. So I love that. I really love that. The Gordon Cole and Shelley scenes are really great here. It's great to see Gordon Cole have this tender moment. Two adults sharing a tender moment. It's wonderful, absolutely wonderful. So there's that scene, of course. So there's romance in the air. There's Annie, and there's Dale, and there's Gordon Cole, and there's Shelley. In that Gordon Cole Shelley way, and Bobby. What's going to happen with Bobby? How is he going to react? What's going to happen with Jack and Audrey? Are they ever going to really get together, or is it going to be something that doesn't develop? So a lot of things going on in terms of relationships too. What's the deal with Ben Horne and Eileen, and what's going to happen between Lana and Dwayne, and what's going to happen with Lucy and Andy and Dick Tremaine? And so all these questions are still remaining. And while all this is going on, of course, the sinister feelings in the air with Wyndham Earle in this chess piece. Again, we're reminded too of how the episode kind of started with Wyndham Earle's storyline and this young man who ends up being killed in this really frightening paper mache, or this mock-up of a chess piece that is also encased in a box. So we have another box. What's in the box, in the gazebo, this giant box? Is it a bomb? It might be, but when they open it, no, it reveals this huge, grotesque, horrible scene that ends this episode of Twin Peaks. So there is a lot here. There's a lot here indeed, in terms of the wheels that are turning, in terms of Miss Twin Peaks contest, in terms of relationships that seem to be established or reestablished, or maybe things that might be going in one direction. Again, we'll have to wait and see, and how that affects the overall trajectory of the community that is Twin Peaks. Again, we shall have to wait and see, but it's coming to a head, my dear friends. There is something afoot, and we might be coming closer to a type of climax as we get to the subsequent episodes. But for now, this is episode 26. All right, my dear friends. So that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well. And please keep on watching a lot of great, great TV shows, including Twin Peaks episodes. We shall continue on with the discussions. But until the next one, my dear friends, take care and cheers.